Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, we begin straight away with our political segment of the show, starting with the latest developments from home. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received a phone call from the Sultan of Oman, Haytham bin Tariq, on Monday. The two leaders exchanged sincere greetings, marking Eid al-Fitr, asking God to bring the occasion with good blessings. They also expressed their hopes of protection for the two brotherly nations and stability and prosperity to spread amongst them. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi congratulated Egyptian Muslims abroad on the approaching Eid al-Fitr. In a cable, the president beseeched Almighty God to make it a happy and blessed feast with many returns, with prosperity, progress and success for them, for Egypt and for its people. The Parliament Speaker, Councillor Hanafi Gebeli, sent a greeting cable on the occasion of Eid al-Fitr to President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, wishing him success and a continued to the path of development in Egypt. Speaker of the Senate, Councillor Abdel Wahab Abdel Rez, also greeted President al-Sisi, marking Eid al-Fitr, wishing blessings to overwhelm the Islamic nation with peace and security. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli also congratulated President al-Sisi on the occasion of Eid al-Fitr, praying for good blessings and health to prevail amongst Arab and Islamic nations. Also, Minister of Defense General Mohammad Zaki sent a greeting cable to President al-Sisi on the occasion of Eid al-Fitr. The Armed Forces Chief of Staff Osama Askar also sent a greeting cable marking the same occasion. Meanwhile, Minister of Interior sent a greeting cable marking Eid al-Fitr, in which he prayed that peace and security prevails in all Arab and Islamic countries. To regional news, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Jordan's King Abdullah II, as well as French President Emmanuel Macron, warned Israel on Monday against launching a threatened offensive against the southern Gaza city of Rafah, urging an immediate ceasefire in its aggression on Gaza. Three leaders urged in a joint editorial published in several newspapers that a UN Security Council call for a ceasefire be fully implemented without any further delay. Earlier, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received on Monday the visiting Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa and his accompanying delegation, in the attendance of the Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli and Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, as well as the Minister of Planning Hala Said. Presidential spokesperson Ahmed Fahmy said during the meeting, President al-Sisi welcomed the Palestinian Premier, wishing his new government all the success to achieve their duties and reach the Palestinian people's aspirations. The head of state further asserted Egypt's constant support to the Palestinian cause, the legal and fair rights of the Palestinians to establish a state with East Jerusalem as its capital. For his part, Mustafa delivered the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's greetings and appreciation to the President for his efforts to protect the Palestinian people, stop the bloodshed, and reject any attempts to liquidate the Palestinian cause. The meeting tackled means of reaching an immediate ceasefire in the besieged Gaza and facilitating the path of humanitarian aid into the Strip. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi warned that the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip is approaching levels of famine. As he received the CIA chief William Burns, the president said the deteriorating situation needed more international efforts to press for allowing sufficient aid into the Gaza Strip. The president also stressed serious work should be exerted in order to reach a just settlement to the Palestinian cause based on a two-state solution. General Abbas Kamel, head of the Egyptian intelligence, also attended the meeting. Presidential spokesperson Councillor Ahmed Fahmy said the meeting discussed joint Egyptian-Qatari-American efforts to reach a ceasefire in Gaza. He said both sides shared views over the necessity of protecting civilians, the dangers of military escalation in the Palestinian city of Rafah, and the full rejection of the forced displacement of the Palestinians. With more news, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry said Israel should adhere to the provisions of the international law and international humanitarian law, which requires an end to its aggression against Palestinian civilians and aid workers in the Gaza Strip. His remark came during a phone call received by the top diplomat from his Australian counterpart, Penny Wong, in which they discussed the latest updates of an Israeli war in Gaza and the Egyptian consultations with international powers to contain the crisis. Ministry spokesperson Ambassador Ahmed Abu Zaid said the two ministers tackled the deteriorating humanitarian and security situations in the Gaza Strip. During the phone call, they discussed efforts to ensure the implementation of a UN Security Council resolution on March 25th that has called for an immediate ceasefire. The State Information Services head, Dia Rashwan, said President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi gave directives to increase the number of aid trucks entering Palestine into the Gaza Strip to 300 daily. Rashwan said 322 trucks entered the enclave from the Egyptian side since the holy month of Ramadan began. In total, 19,354 trucks entered Gaza through the Rafah border crossing, whilst 3,700 Palestinian patients were admitted at Egyptian hospitals for treatment since the Israeli aggression began. For more news, Israel and Hamas both dampened hopes of a speedy breakthrough in Cairo talks towards a Gaza truce and hostage release deal after the Egyptian state-linked media reported some significant progress. We have the details.
Talks on a truce in the Gaza conflict are making progress in Cairo, and all parties have agreed on basic points, according to Egypt's Al Qahira News TV channel, citing a senior Egyptian source. Israel and Hamas sent teams to Egypt on Sunday for fresh talks on a potential ceasefire in the 6-month conflict following the arrival on Saturday of US CIA Director William Burns. According to Al Qahira, the Hamas and Qatar delegation left Cairo and will return within 2 days to agree on the terms of a final agreement, while the Israel and US delegations will leave within a few hours. It added that consultations will continue in the next 48 hours. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Sunday that Israel would not agree to a ceasefire without the release of hostages, while Hamas reiterated its demands, which include a permanent ceasefire, the withdrawal of Israeli occupation forces from Gaza, and a return of displaced people. Netanyahu said that despite growing international pressure, Israel would not give in to demands from Hamas. Thousands of Israeli protesters in Jerusalem rallied on Sunday demanding the release of around 130 hostages still held in Gaza. Western countries have voiced outrage over an unacceptably high Palestinian civilian death toll and humanitarian crisis in Gaza that have resulted from Israel's brutal aggression in Gaza. More than 33,100 Palestinians have been killed in the Israeli aggression, according to the health ministry in Gaza.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're now delighted to be joined over the telephone for this edition of our show by our guest, His Excellency Ambassador Midhat El-Maliki, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Very good evening to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Good evening to you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for joining us today. And let me start, Your Excellency, by the latest development with regard to the Palestinian file. We've seen the leaders of Egypt, Jordan and France warning Israel on Monday against the threatened offensive in the southern Gaza city of Rafah, urging an immediate ceasefire in its war. How do you see this latest development with regards to the warning by these three leaders to Israel?
Well, actually, the most important thing is that we have already a resolution of the United Nations that was not respected by Israel.
Yes.
Due to the non-binding word used by the representative of the permanent representative of the United States at the Security Council during the same session where the Security Council have adopted a ceasefire in Gaza until the end of Ramadan. Unfortunately, this was not respected by Israel due to, as I said, alibi that was given to them by the United States. Having said that, this is the second time that the three leaders have expressed their deep concern about the repercussions of a terrestrial operation in Rafah, which could jeopardize the life of millions of people. We are literally talking about 1.5 million refugees there who are already forced, which is another violation to the human rights and to the international law by Israel, since they were forced by Israel to move from the northern part and the middle part of Gaza to the southern part. So this is once again, I think in 2 weeks, that the same three leaders are expressing their deep concern about such an operation in Rafah due to the high toll of human lives that could be taken if this operation would take place. Unfortunately, Israel insisting, led by the extreme right wings of the extreme right government. We've heard the Minister Smotrich just yesterday saying that if the Prime Minister would not take the decision to invade Rafah, then he does not deserve to be Prime Minister. So once again, they are pushing the extreme right Prime Minister to even take harder measures and extreme measures once again, this regardless of the human life that could be at stake at this moment. So this is, once again, I'm saying and I'm repeating that it's not just the three countries. The three countries are expressing the world community about the necessity of avoiding any land operation in this enclave of Rafah, since it's completely filled with refugees at this moment, and any operation, no matter what the scale of this operation, which is something very important to mention, since the United States recently have said that it does mind a major operation in Rafah, which means that they are okay with a minor operation. But I insist here on explaining that no matter what the size of the operation that is going to take place, it is going to cost human lives, and this is very important. Let's just say that those lives are as important as the 7 workers of the World Kitchen who lost their lives and made even President Biden call Prime Minister Netanyahu and other world leaders such as the British Prime Minister and so on expressed their deep concern about what the measures that Israel is taking. And we are talking here about 7 lives that were lost, unfortunately, and perished during this war in another violation from Israel. And I think that the Palestinian human lives are no less important than those 7 workers who provoked a word rage against Israel due to their deaths.
Absolutely, Your Excellency. Also, you mentioned the issue of the United States, which said it opposes assaults on Rafah. As you mentioned, the scope of the assault after the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said a date for the attack had been set. Now, how do you see the timing of this? Also, you know, we've seen the 3 leaders, President Sisi and the Jordanian King, as well as the French President, urging the UN Security Council resolution that has called for an immediate ceasefire to be fully implemented without any further delay. Could you tell me or enlighten us what is, you know, impeding this resolution since it has been passed?
Well, it's a continuation of Israel's decision to invade Rafah no matter what. According to Israel, there are 2 targets to this war, which is the total destruction of Hamas, even if this would cost the life of the Israeli hostages. And we've seen what's happening in Israel itself and about the families of the hostages and how even the security forces are dealing with them. The police is dealing with the families of the detainees and their sympathizers, and actually large-scale demonstrations. We've seen a huge number of Israeli demonstrators against the government for the release of the hostages in a specific way, because any operation would simply mean that putting the lives of those detainees more and more in danger, and the risk of them being killed by the Israeli forces during the attack is more and more imminent. So this is the first thing, so that the extreme right government is insisting on continuing its assault on Rafah, no matter the lives of people who are going to be lost. I mean, Palestinian lives and, of course, also Israeli lives. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there's still the readiness of the United States to go along with this operation as long as it is, between inverted commas, a minor operation. But as I said in my first intervention, that any assault would be, no matter how the scale of this assault, would be endangering a lot of human lives, because it's very dense. The population there is extremely dense. We are talking about Gaza, which is already one of the most dense population areas in the world. And now we are talking about all of them almost being cornered in the extreme south of the Gaza Strip. So any operation would cost a lot of life. But
Absolutely.
the United States have chosen once again to isolate itself from the international community by unconditionally still, I know that the positions, and we all as observers have seen that there is a divergence between the United States and Israel, especially between President Biden and the Prime Minister Netanyahu. But this, until now, was not reflected into serious decisions to stop any arm exportation to Israel. On the contrary, arms are still flooding towards Israel as much as it needs to continue its operation, and even the good words that the United States is putting to just calm down the international community. This is totally rage against the United States decision to continue its support to Israel. However, they are just trying to give us words to calm them. But in reality, the situation is still as it is. There is an unconditional support to Israel in its assault. We haven't seen serious effort from the Western world. And I mean here the countries that supplies Israel with arms, taking any decision about holding the arms to the Palestinians, to the Israelis, not to launch any operation against Israel. Unfortunately, the situation is very gloomy, and I'm pessimistic that Israel will not wait even long after Eid, if it is not before that, to start launching its assault on Rafah, which will actually endanger all the countries involved. I mean, we are talking about the Palestinian in first place, and we are talking also about Egypt. Our national security is now threatened by attacks, Israeli attacks on our borders, and the casualties that could happen out of this. And on the other hand, the whole region of the Middle East that could be destabilized, although all our efforts and President Sisi efforts to try to contain this crisis by holding any further military operation at this moment.
Absolutely, Your Excellency. Now, also we've seen today the Palestinian Hamas movement accusing Israel of not responding to any of its demands in the talks to reach a truce in the Israeli war in the Gaza Strip. And we've seen, during previous rounds of mediation, ending in deadlock. How do you see this?
Well, since when have we seen Israel responding to any peace calls or any truce calls? Israel do not see, the government of Israel, to be more specific, the current government of Israel do not see any solution and do not see any possibility of it staying in power unless this war continues. And that's why it's not just trying to enter Rafah and to have this land operation, but actually trying to implicate other countries such as Lebanon, such as Syria. They're trying to enlarge the scope of the war to have a Middle East crisis, so that the United States at this stage will show more presence in the area to support Israel. And this is exactly what the government of Israel wants. So we hope that Israel would, at a certain point, listen to the sound of reason and try to find a solution, even for the sake of its own detainees. This is a very important issue, and that's what the Israeli public is feeling, and that's why the demonstration.
Yes, we've seen tens of thousands of Israelis protesting against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Because they know that the government is sacrificing their own people in order to continue with the war and accordingly stay in power. This is the target, the very short-sighted target of the government of Israel, is to stay in power. And we've heard even yesterday, as we speak, that Minister Smotrich have said it in a clear voice that Prime Minister Netanyahu has to go with the assault, or else he will lose his seat as the Prime Minister of Israel. So unfortunately, all the signs are here for the continuation of the historic attacks on the Palestinian people since, and unfortunately, and I would say something that might seem a little bit evil, but since they are not working with the World Kitchen, then nobody will really care about them.
Right. Finally, Your Excellency, one last question, if I may. Turkey said it will impose trade restrictions on Israel starting Tuesday over the war in Gaza, especially after these measures come after Turkey said Israel has blocked its attempt to airdrop aid to Gaza. Israel is even going as far as preventing airdrops of aid into Gaza. How can, on the other hand, they say they are not doing any practices of genocide or collective punishment or starvation?
Well, of course, I mean, we don't need to be judges working at the International Court of Justice to know that what's taking place in Gaza is a full-scale genocide. This is quite clear. I mean, you don't need to kill over 33,000 persons and wound over 70,000 others just to prove that, or even to take vengeance for the 1,200 persons that were killed during the 7th of October attacks. So what's taking place there is to make the life in Gaza is total lost. I mean, nobody can live there. It's unbearable life. I mean, do you need to target all these hospitals and all these schools and all these universities and all these civilian targets? You don't need that. So
Absolutely.
The only thing is that Israel is trying to do is to make life in Gaza unbearable for the Palestinians, so that maybe at a later stage the Palestinians will accept to migrate from Gaza to other areas where they could feel safer and they could have a normal life like any normal people. This is their hope, and that's why the carpet bombing that is taking place in all of Gaza. And now that they have emptied all of northern Gaza and central Gaza, so we know that there is a full and total destruction there. And the idea of preventing any humanitarian aid by the air is that, and this is only my assumption, my suggestion, that maybe because they will have air operation along with the land operation in Rafah, and they need the skies to be clear for their operation, and that's why they are preventing any more aid to continue with the starvation of the people. So, I mean, the world community has to understand we are starving a people just to make them weaker more than they are, so that airstrikes and land strikes could be more effective and kill more of them by the Israeli IDF. Unfortunately, this is the situation how it is, and we have to wait and see that the countries that are accomplice with Israel, such as the United States and all the other European countries, would at a certain moment take concrete measures against Israel and Israel's brutality against for the Palestinian people. We have to see if you are serious about what you are preaching, about wanting peace in the area and about two-state solution and all what you've been preaching for the last 6 months, you have to take a step now. Now is the time, or you are a full-fledged accomplice with the Israeli IDF in this invasion. There is no other explanation.
Absolutely. On that note, I'd like to thank you very, very much. Your Excellency Ambassador Midhat Al-Maliki, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you very much, sir, for your time and your insight and for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, a short break and we'll be back to continue our episode. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Still continuing with our news. Tens of thousands of Israelis protested against the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Saturday as Israel's aggression in Gaza reached its half-year mark. We have the details.
Tens of thousands of Israelis protested against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Saturday as Israel's aggression in Gaza reaches its half-year mark. Organizers said about 100,000 people converged at a Tel Aviv crossroads, renamed Democracy Square, since mass protests against controversial judicial reforms last year. Chanting elections now, protesters called for his resignation as the war in Gaza enters its 7th month on Sunday. Rallies were also held in other cities, with Israel's opposition leader Yair Lapid taking part in one in Kafr Saba ahead of his departure for talks in Washington. Israeli media said clashes had broken out between protesters and police at the Tel Aviv rally, and police said one protester had been arrested. Later, the protesters in Tel Aviv were joined by families of Gaza hostages and their supporters. Earlier, the occupation army announced that troops had recovered the body of a hostage abducted by Hamas and later murdered in captivity in the Gaza Strip. The recovery of Elad Katsir's body brings to 12 the number of bodies of hostages which the army says it has brought home from Gaza during the war. About 250 Israelis and foreigners were taken hostage on October 7th. The occupation army says 129 are still being held in Gaza, including 34 who are presumed dead. Demonstrators were to take to the streets again with a rally planned in Jerusalem.
Welcome back. Still with our news, Palestinian Muslims marked a tense and somber last Friday of Ramadan in Jerusalem with minor scuffles between worshippers and Israeli police controlling the entrance to Al-Aqsa Mosque. Some 120,000 people descended on the shrine, which dominates the old city, with the Grand Mufti Muhammad Ahmad Hussein urging the faithful to brave the heavy police presence because of the war in Gaza. Friday also marked Laylat al-Adr, or the Night of Destiny, a spiritual climax of the Muslim holy month, commemorating the moment of the Archangel Gabriel's first appearance to Prophet Muhammad and the beginning of the revealing of the Quran. It's the night when Muslims believe their prayers are most likely to be granted, but many Palestinians were not in the mood to celebrate and were praying for an end to the war in Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel came under mounting pressure to step up aid to Gaza, with its military admitting a series of grave mistakes when a drone killed 7 aid workers in the embattled territory. US-based charity World Central Kitchen, whose staff were killed in Monday night's drone strike, demanded an independent commission investigate the killings. Britain, which lost 3 nationals in the strike, called for a wholly independent review. Poland said it had demanded a criminal inquiry about Israel after what it called the murder of the aid workers, one of whom was Polish. Moving to the Republican White House hopeful Donald Trump, who compared himself to the South African anti-apartheid icon Nelson Mandela, sparking quick and virulent criticism from President Joe Biden's campaign team. 77-year-old Trump has been indicted in 4 different criminal cases, all of which could end in jail time for the billionaire. In one of those cases, he stands accused of paying hush money to a one-time porn star before the 2016 presidential election, which he won over Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton. Trial is set to begin April 15th, and the judge has opposed a partial gag order on Trump. For our final news item in this segment, an eclipse mania gripped North America on Monday as a breathtaking celestial spectacle set to be witnessed by tens of millions of people offered a rare convergence of commercial and scientific opportunities. Let's take a look.
The first total solar eclipse to grace North America in 7 years made landfall in Mexico Monday as millions of sky watchers gaze upward for the start of a celestial display, at least partially visible, weather permitting across most of the continent. The Mexican beachside resort town of Mazatlan was the first major viewing point along the path of totally in North America. Thousands of people gathered along the coastal promenade, setting themselves up in deck chairs with a solar-safe eyewear as an orchestra played the Star Wars movie theme. The crowds burst into cheers and applause, and the eclipse reached totality. While clear skies prevail, observers along the direct path of the eclipse were being treated to the rare spectacle of the moon appearing as a dark orb creeping in front of the sun, briefly blocking out all but a brilliant halo of light or corona around the sun's outer edge. The period of totality lasting up to 4.5 minutes, depending the observer's location, was ushered in by a number of 3 eerie eclipse effects.
That wraps up the political segment. Now time to bring you the latest developments in the business world. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Starting with a look at some business news, Ministry of Planning and Economic Development has unveiled a new approach to assessing private sector investments, revealing a surge in both the amount and proportion of private investments in Egypt. In its pursuit of enhancing the national account systems, Ministry has developed a new method to quantify private investments. The initiative is part of a broader effort to refine Egyptian GDP figures. Revised methodology enhances accuracy of the informal sector investment estimates and integrates comprehensive data on research and development investments. The Minister of Finance, Mohammed Maid, said presidential priorities in the new republic announced by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi will address a new phase in the process of building and developing comprehensive capabilities of the modern Egyptian state. During an open discussion with investors and exporters about the draft budget, Minister said government works with all state agencies to increase resources and enhance economic capabilities by continuing to pursue financial policies that are more supportive to the localization of industry in Egypt. He pointed out Egyptian shares with investors the burden of financing to reduce production costs, stimulate exports, and sustain economic growth. Welcome back. We're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by Dr. Naveen Nakhla, the Sustainable Development Expert. Dr. Naveen, good afternoon to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us. And let me start by asking you about the latest address by the Minister of Finance, who said that the new republic priorities that were announced by President el-Sisi will address a new phase in the process of building and developing the comprehensive capabilities of the modern Egyptian state. How do you see this latest announcement?
Yes, first of all, I would like to say a happy feast
Likewise,
for everyone.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. We can see that Egypt, during the new government and the new republic, are taking a lot of construction steps and a lot of development. And the coming is even building more on the infrastructure and on the capabilities that Egypt is going through. So if we see the vision of 2030 with the sustainable development goals and the building and the construction of Egypt, we saw that Egypt, we used to live on 7% of the total area of Egypt. Now we are living on double this area. A lot of housing capacities are built, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of development, a lot of also factories and a lot of manufacturing areas and logistic hubs and areas for new cities, for manufacturing and new cities.
Yes.
We saw that there are also the fourth generation Egyptian new cities. The new administrative capital city, you saw how big, how smart it is, with approximately 170,000 acres. And the construction already finished on around 40,000 acres. We saw the development in New Alamein and the new area of Al-Hikma. The New Alamein, we're talking about 49,000 acres. And we saw the new East Port Said with the area of around 16,000 acres.
Yes.
We saw also the new 6th of October city with 78,000 acres.
Yes.
New Luxor city, a lot of construction, a lot of development, a lot of visionary, continuous economic development and sustainable development.
Absolutely. Doctor, now we've seen might saying that, the government is working with state agencies to increase resources and enhance economic capabilities, as well as support, the localization of industry in Egypt. How important is this localization of industry, especially with regards to self-sufficiency, increasing exports and decreasing imports?
Yes, it is very important for us to start localizing industry and localizing manufacturing in Egypt. I always say these are the two legs of any country. These are the real income and the real money coming in the country from the industry and from the manufacturing. And it's very important. Also, we saw the new protocol of the UN SDCF, which was signed by the Minister of International Cooperation, and it contains of many axes of action, governmental actions and programs. Also, it is a tool for planning and implementing cooperation programs between the Arab Republic of Egypt and the United Nations system. And it started from 2023 till 2027. In line with the Egypt Vision 2030 and national sectorial strategies, this cooperation framework for sustainable development strategy in Egypt is very important.
Absolutely.
And the priorities reflect in the framework of major policies and initiatives all over our country.
Indeed,
as well
Doctor.
As, yes, yes.
And also, we've seen the Minister of Finance pointing out that the Egyptian government is sharing with investors the burden of financing, as well as reducing production costs, stimulating exports, and of course sustaining economic growth, which is really the name of the game, to have sustainable economic growth. How important do you see this end result, Doctor?
Economic growth also, Egypt are taking many pillars and many processes to reach this economic growth.
Yes.
On all levels. And as we say, in the New Republic, no one is left behind. So on all levels, in the villages of Decent Life Initiative, Haya Karima, economic growth with youth and women, and on the level of businessmen, on the level of attracting investors, foreign investors, on all levels, economic growth is taken care of, and production and manufacturing,
yes,
and licensing even the unlicensed small factories and workshops.
Yes.
We are trying now to help them to license and to grow and to scale up. And of course, a lot of all the infrastructure took place in Egypt, and all the development, it really attracted.
Indeed.
We are one of the biggest attractions in the world for foreign investors to come and invest and start manufacturing locally.
Egypt. Yes, absolutely right. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. I'd like to thank you so much, Dr. Naveen Nakhla, our sustainable development and economic expert. Thank you, ma'am, for your time and your insight. A short break, and we'll be back. Stay tuned. Back still with our economic review. The United States will not accept a situation where underpriced Chinese goods flood the global market, battering industries elsewhere. We have more details in this report.
The United States will not accept a situation where underpriced Chinese goods flood the global market, battering industries elsewhere. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen made her statements on Monday as she wrapped up high-level talks in China and warned about the risks of China's excess industrial capacity during 4 days of meetings with officials and business leaders in the southern city of Guangzhou and capital Beijing. Washington is concerned that Chinese government support is leading to more production capacity than global markets can absorb, resulting in a surge of cheap exports in sectors such as solar and electric vehicles and stifling the growth of those industries elsewhere. Yellen on Monday said massive Chinese government support more than a decade ago had led to below-cost steel flooding the global market, which decimated industries across the world and in the United States. She said some change in Chinese policy would be necessary and appropriate, but did not commit to specific actions Washington might take otherwise, while underscoring the United States did not seek to decouple from China. After 11 hours of meetings with her counterpart, Vice Premier He Lifang, she raised the issue with Premier Li Keqiang as well. Moves Washington hopes will bring the concerns to the highest levels of Chinese policy making. Yellen's push on overcapacity comes even as bilateral ties have stabilized in other areas, with both sides willing to cooperate on issues including climate change, debt restructuring, and money laundering. The two countries have also agreed to open channels for further talks on excess capacity.
We now move to Italy, where the Economy Minister Giancarlo Giorgetti said that Italy is ready to intervene in case it overshoots its budget goals, but doesn't see the need at the moment ahead of a new set of Italy's government economic projections expected. Finally, wrapping up with the exciting world of sports, the CAF Champions League reigning champions Al Ahly defeated Tanzania's Simba 2-0 in the second leg of the tournament's quarterfinals on Friday at the Cairo International Stadium. Red Devils defeated Simba 1-0 in the first leg of the tournament's quarterfinals last Friday at the Benjamin Mkapa Stadium in Dar es Salaam. Red Devils qualified for the quarterfinals of the CAF Champions League after topping their group with 12 points. Zamalek have reached the CAF Confederation Cup semi-final after drawing 1-1 with Modern Future in the second leg of an all-Egyptian affair at Cairo International Stadium on Sunday to advance 3-2 on aggregate. This is Zamalek's third time in history in the competition's semi-final, where they'll play against Ghana's Dreams. In the English Premier League, Arsenal have the upper hand in the Premier League title race after a 3-0 win. Brighton lied to Liverpool's 2-2 draw at Manchester United, allowing Gunners to end the weekend on top thanks to their superior goal difference. Defending champions Manchester City just 1 point behind the top two after a Kevin De Bruyne-inspired 4-2 victory at Crystal Palace. Moving to tennis, Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz said they'll be feeling the absence of rival and clay king Rafael Nadal as the Monte Carlo Masters began Sunday. The 37-year-old Spaniard was forced to withdraw from the traditional start of the European clay season as his long injury drama continues. Nadal owns a record 11 trophies in the Principality with a 73-6 tournament record, including a 46-match winning streak from 2005 to 2013. He has competed in the main draw 17 times. Finally, American Danielle Collins continued her late career-rich vein of form, winning the WTA Charleston Open clay title on Sunday with a 6-2, 6-1 defeat of Russia's Daria Kasatkina. Victory comes a week after Collins enjoyed the biggest win of her career, clinching the Miami Open 1000 hardcourt title. And her back-to-back wins mean she'll move up to 15th in the world rankings. With that, we wrap up our edition of our program, Newsroom Live, here on Nile TV International. We do hope you have enjoyed it. My name is Angie Mehermini. Thanks for joining us.